Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This is a public meeting and hearing for the draft permit decision for Pacific Resource Recovery Services, Inc. at 3150 East Pico Boulevard, Los Angeles. My name is Teresa Hernandez. I'm a public participation specialist with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and I'll be your meeting facilitator this evening. If you need technical assistance, please use the raise hand function on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. This meeting is being recorded. By participating in this meeting, you are agreeing to be recorded. Mark?
Muy buenas tardes a todos y gracias por acompañarnos. Esta es una reunión y audiencia pública para la decisión sobre el borrador de permiso de operación para Pacific Resource Recovery Services encontrado en 3150 East Pico Boulevard en Los Ángeles. Mi nombre es Teresa Hernández, soy especialista en participación pública del Departamento de Control de Sustancias Tóxicas y seré la facilitadora de su reunión esta noche. Si necesita asistencia técnica, utilice por favor la función de levantar la mano virtual que aparece en la parte inferior de su pantalla en Zoom. Esta reunión está siendo grabada y al participar usted acepta ser grabado. Back to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Mark. We ask that you select your preferred language, English or Spanish, so that you will be able to fully participate in the meeting. To do so, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. You will see three options: off, English, and Spanish. Please select English or Spanish. Again, everyone, including those participating in English, will need to select a language to fully participate in the meeting. Please choose English or Spanish now. Mark?
Y le solicitamos por favor que seleccione su idioma preferido, ya sea inglés o español, para que pueda participar plenamente en la reunión de esta tarde. Para hacerlo, en breve aparecerá en la parte inferior de su pantalla un icono de un globo terráqueo que dice Interpretation o Interpretación, y ahí verá tres opciones: off o desactivado, o inglés o español. Por favor, seleccione ya sea inglés o español, y de nuevo, todos, incluidos los que participan en inglés, deberán seleccionar su idioma para participar plenamente en esta reunión. Por favor, tome un momento ahora de elegir ya sea inglés o español. Thank you, Teresa. Back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Presentation materials in English and Spanish are available in the project's EnviroStor webpage at envirostor.dtsc.ca.gov/public. That's envirostor.dtsc.ca.gov/PUBLIC. And search for Pacific Resource Recovery Services, Inc. That's PACIFIC, Resource, RESOURCE, Recovery, RECOVERY, Services, SERVICES, Inc., INC. In the search toolbar. Closed captions are on for this meeting. You can move the box or turn them off by clicking the CC icon. To ensure that all meeting participants can fully participate, we've developed the following agreements. This is a shared space, so please be cautious of this and courteous to your fellow meeting attendees. Be mindful of the space you are taking up and give others the opportunity to express themselves as well. You may be muted at any time during this meeting. We remind you again to please make your language selection, English or Spanish, so that you will be able to fully participate in the meeting. Again, everyone, including those participating in English, will need to make a selection. To ensure all meeting participants receive the same information, and especially those joining receiving interpretation, please speak clearly and at an even pace. The Q&A feature is enabled, and you can use it to type questions throughout the presentation. Please wait for the public comment period to provide public comments for the record. The Department of Toxic Substances Control, known as DTSC, is hosting this meeting and hearing. Tonight, we will be presenting and accepting public comments related to the draft permit decision for the Pacific Resource Recovery Services, Inc. project at 3150 East Pico Boulevard, Los Angeles. Ryan Batty, the permitting division supervisor, will go over DTSC's roles on this project. Taylor Gross, the project manager, will give the presentation, followed by a question and answer period that I will help facilitate. The Q&A is specifically to answer any clarifying questions you may have of the presentation. After the Q&A period, we will begin the public comment session for the official record. All public comments will be responded to and included in the response to comments document, which will be uploaded to EnviroStor and sent to those providing their contact information. If you would like a copy of this document sent to you, please send your contact information to me via email at teresa.hernandez@dtsc.ca.gov. That's TERESAHERNANDEZ@dtsc.ca.gov. And note if you would like to receive it by email or mail. Again, my name is Teresa Hernandez. I am the DTSC Public Participation Specialist assigned to this project. I would also like to introduce to you all the panelists with the Department of Toxic Substances Control who are joining this evening. Taylor Gross, Senior Hazardous Substance Engineer and Project Manager. Ryan Batty, DTSC Supervising Hazardous Substances Engineer and Hearing Officer. And Manuel Lopez, Unit Supervisor for Public Participation. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening amongst your many competing priorities. This meeting is scheduled from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information about the draft permit decision for Pacific Resource Recovery Services, Inc., respond to your questions, and accept public comments. We are hosting this meeting from different locations and request that you bear with us if there is a time lag or other technical issues. We sincerely appreciate your patience, understanding, and cooperation in making this a successful meeting. For folks who may have recently joined, I would like to give another reminder to select your language preference. All participants, including those participating in English, need to make a language selection, English or Spanish, to fully participate in the meeting. If you need a hand with this, please let us know. Is anyone having trouble? Okay. With that, I will now invite our first presenter for tonight's meeting, Ryan Batty, the Supervising Hazardous Substance Engineer, to begin our presentation. Ryan?
Thank you, Teresa, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Batty, and I'm a supervisor in the Permitting Division at DTSC. I will now present a series of slides that explain the hazardous waste facility permitting process. Next slide, please. I'd like to set the foundation for who we are at DTSC and why we are here. Our mission at DTSC is to protect California's people, communities, and the environment from toxic substances. Our vision is to do everything we can under our authority so that all of California can thrive in a healthy environment. It is what drives our work and our decisions. Next slide, please. The Permitting Division at DTSC oversees permitted hazardous waste facilities in California that treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste. Our overarching goal is to ensure that hazardous waste facilities operate safely and in a manner that is protective of human health and the environment. If a facility would like to treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste, they must submit a permit application to DTSC for review and approval. The applications are not just a couple of pages or forms, but are usually volumes of binders with detailed technical and operating information. DTSC staff thoroughly reviews the application for conformance with laws, regulations, and standards applicable to hazardous waste management. Next slide, please. The permit application for a hazardous waste facility contains many elements that are designed to ensure that the facility can operate safely. Some examples of the contents of the permit application include waste analysis procedures, contingency plans, training materials, environmental monitoring work plans, and closure plans. The facility must have a closure plan and a closure cost estimate, which is used to establish financial assurance mechanism for closure. Financial assurance is important because it ensures that money is set aside in advance so that when the time comes, the facility is able to safely clean and close the facility. Next slide, please. When DTSC completes its technical review of the permit application, a draft permit decision is made. Because a permit decision is a discretionary decision, DTSC considers the environmental impacts that may result from the decision by following procedures mandated by the California Environmental Quality Act. A document called a statement of basis is prepared, which explains the decision that DTSC has reached. Next slide. The draft permit decision is then released for public review and comment. The public comment period must be a minimum of 45 days. In addition, a public meeting and hearing may be scheduled, such as the meeting we are at tonight. Next slide, please. And finally, once the public comment period ends, DTSC will take time to review and consider all comments. Each person that submits comments will receive a written response to their comment. DTSC will take all the comments received into account when it makes a final decision on the permit application. The final permit decision can be to finalize the draft permit as proposed, finalize the draft permit with changes, or withdraw the draft permit and deny the application if good cause exists. Next slide. Once the final permit decision has been issued, it can be appealed any time during the 30 days following the decision. All appeals must be sent to DTSC's Board of Environmental Safety for their consideration. Instructions for filing an appeal will be contained in the Notice of Final Permit Decision. Thank you for allowing me to explain the permit application process. I will now hand it over to Taylor Gross to share information about the permit application submitted by Pacific Resource Recovery Services. Next slide.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Taylor Gross, and I'm a senior engineer here in the permitting division of the Department of Toxic Substances Control. I'm also the permitting project manager for the Pacific Resource Recovery Services facility. Next slide. So tonight we'll go through the items listed here on the slide. We'll discuss the location of the site, the operations that are conducted on site. We'll look at the history of DTSC's review of the permit application, and we'll talk about some of the main components of the draft permit. The goal here is to familiarize you with the daily activities that are conducted at this site, as well as some of the protective measures that are in place to ensure this facility operates in a safe and protective manner. Next slide. Pacific Resource Recovery Services facility is located in the Boyle Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles at 3150 East Pico Boulevard and is immediately north of the city of Vernon. In the picture on the screen, you can see the facility outlined in yellow, and it's bordered on the south by the Union Pacific Rail Line it does have access to one rail spur that it uses for transportation of hazardous waste to offsite destination facilities. In the 1970s, the facility performed paint manufacturing as Ellis Paint Company and solvent distribution and recycling as Pacific Coast Lacquer. Pacific Resource Recovery Services was established in 1991 to take over that solvent recycling program from Pacific Coast Lacquer. The facility was issued its first hazardous waste permit in 1993, and that permit was renewed in 2012. Next slide. Pacific Resource Recovery Services, throughout the rest of this presentation, I'll probably just refer to them as PRRS or the facility, provides waste management services to a variety of industries that generate waste chemicals. Many of those chemicals are typically used in the paint and coating industries. These waste streams often are generated from general surface preparation, cleanup, and equipment maintenance activities, as well as from paint application and cleanup activities. The operations that are conducted on site at the facility include treatment, storage, and consolidation of many liquid and solid hazardous wastes. On this slide, we have some images displaying the various operations that are conducted on site. Next slide. So first, we'll talk about storage. The facility stores various hazardous wastes on site until they can be tested, consolidated into larger containers, and then sent off-site for destruction or disposal. Various types of containers and tanks are used to store hazardous waste on site, and some of those containers that are used on site are shown here in the photo on the right side of the screen. All containers used on site to store hazardous waste must be in good condition and must be made from a material that is chemically compatible with the waste. If a container is found during the receiving process to be damaged, leaking, or otherwise unsuitable, the contents will be transferred into another container that is sound and appropriate. All containers must be properly labeled with the contents, the date, the manifest number, and any other information necessary to identify that waste. that waste. The units where container storage occurs are all designed with secondary containment systems, meaning that in the event of a spill, a release, or some other emergency, none of the contaminants would be released into the environment. Next slide. The site also conducts storage in tanks. The tanks store liquid waste after it has been consolidated and blended. The waste is stored in these tanks until it can be transferred into a rail car before being shipped off for destruction or disposal. Waste that is suitable to be used as fuel will be sent for destruction in a cement kiln or an industrial furnace, whereas waste that is not suitable to be used as fuel will be sent for disposal. Several of the tanks that are used on site are shown here in this photo. The tanks on site were required to undergo a structural assessment from a licensed engineer to ensure that they are structurally sound, and that assessment needs to be repeated every 5 years. There are 6 permitted tanks on site. Each of those tanks is either a 10,000-gallon tank or a 5,000-gallon tank. The tank storage farm is designed with a secondary containment for the entire area. Next slide. Okay, next we'll talk about the treatment of hazardous waste. So the main type of treatment of hazardous waste that occurs on site is fuel blending. Fuel blending involves mixing either hazardous wastes or hazardous wastes and commercial fuels to meet the specifications required by some off-site receiving facility. This is considered treatment because it's changing the chemical composition of the waste, but it's important to note that the waste is still hazardous after the fuel blending occurs. Fuel blending occurs at the facility within the permitted tanks and within the liquefaction unit. The liquefaction unit is the gray machine shown on the right side of the image on the screen. In this treatment unit, solids or sludges, which remain in the container after the free-flowing liquids have been drained out, are mixed with solvents before being sent to the storage tanks for consolidation. On the left side of the photo on this screen, you'll see 2 employees. They're standing in front of the compaction unit. This unit compacts solid wastes, such as spray booth filters and metal cans, into other containers. These compacted wastes are then shipped off-site for further management. As we'll discuss later, this renewal adds a second compactor, and it modifies the liquefaction unit. Next slide. The final site operation we'll discuss is railcar loading and off-site shipment. Tank cars are loaded at the rail spur, which is directly adjacent to the tank farm. Flexible hoses for waste feed and vapor return are hooked up to the rail car, and waste is transferred directly from the authorized units. For example, the tanks that are next to the rail car in this photo. And they're transferred directly to the tank cars. The largest tank car that the facility would use has a capacity of around 25,000 gallons. Rail cars containing hazardous wastes will not remain on the facility for longer than 10 days. During the time that it's on the facility, the total volume of waste in storage, including the volume of waste that is in the rail car, will not exceed the total permitted capacity of the facility. Tanker trucks can also be loaded in this area, and container shipments may be loaded out of the south warehouse via van or flatbed trailers. Next slide. Now that we've discussed the various operations that are conducted on site, let's talk about DTSC's history regulating the facility. Since 2013, DTSC has conducted 6 inspections at the site and 5 reviews of the facility's financial responsibility. These inspections are unannounced, and during the time frame over which the current permit has been effective, there have been 0 Class 1 violations, which is the most serious violation that DTSC issues. As a result, the VSP score for the facility, which is a measure of their level of compliance, is 0, which means that they are in the acceptable range. In 2017, the US EPA inspected the facility and found 3 areas of noncompliance, including improper calibration of testing equipment, an open vent on one tank, and a malfunctioning pressure relief valve. All of those issues that were identified by US EPA have been corrected. Next slide. Another consideration DTSC uses when reviewing the permit application is ensuring compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. CEQA reviews potential projects to see if there are any impacts on the environment as a result of completing that project. DTSC filed a negative declaration in May of 2012. For this renewal, we've prepared an addendum to that negative declaration, and both are available as part of the administrative record. Ultimately, DTSC has concluded that the proposed project, i.e. the draft permit, will not create a significant environmental effect that was not previously analyzed. Next slide. The major changes in this permit include conditions that relate to new equipment and hold the facility to a higher operating standard and ensure worker safety. The facility is requesting additional capacity, adding authorization to store hazardous waste in the existing north warehouse. This additional storage unit more than doubles the volume of hazardous waste that can be stored on site. The facility has also been authorized to install a second compactor for the solid waste compaction, as I mentioned earlier, and will be replacing the 400-gallon vat in the liquefaction unit with 2 100-gallon vats to better meet process needs. The facility is adding a bulk container storage area in the same area that a previous thin film evaporator and tube still operated. However, the facility is not authorized to utilize the bulk storage area until the thin film evaporator and tube still are closed. In addition to these changes, the facility is proposing to install a thermal oxidizer for destruction of vapors caused by the management of hazardous waste in the railcar loading area and the processing area where the liquefaction unit and compactors operate. The purpose of the thermal oxidizer is to primarily facilitate filling a rail car in one day while still complying with the air quality regulations. Finally, there are 2 tanks that failed to meet tank integrity requirements during their last certification. DTSC has required that Pacific Resource Recovery Services modify these 2 tanks within 90 days so that they meet tank integrity requirements, or they initiate closure of those 2 tanks. Next slide. Now that we've discussed the background of the facility, as well as some of the components of the permit application and draft permit, we can discuss the next steps from here. We're currently in the public comment period. Our goal is to gather comments and feedback from the public to inform our decision. When the comment period ends on August 13th, DTSC will review the comments that were received and will prepare a response to comments document. When the comment period ends and the response to comment document is issued, a permit decision will be made. Next slide. When a permit decision is made, DTSC can either issue the permit as proposed, issue the permit with modifications, or deny the permit for good cause. Again, at this time, a permit decision has not been made. A permit decision will be made after the comment period. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I appreciate you all giving me the time to share some information regarding this facility, the permit application, and the draft permit. I'll now hand it back off to Teresa Hernandez, who will go over some of the public outreach activities and then prepare us for the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. My contact information will be shared again during this presentation. Please feel free to contact me with any questions you have regarding this facility or the review of the permit application. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you, Taylor. In the next few slides, I will present an overview of DTSC's public participation program, including information related to public outreach activities conducted during our review of this permit application and how you can provide official public comments. Our goal is to hear from you and receive comments you may have regarding this project. The purpose of DTSC's public participation process is to provide communities with the opportunities to actively participate in our decision-making process and encourage two-way communication between you and DTSC. This approach allows for dialogue so that your concerns and priorities are considered in our regulatory activities. We recognize that meaningful public involvement ultimately results in better environmental risk management decisions. Public participation is an integral part of the DTSC hazardous waste management program. Required activities for this project include, but were not limited to, those listed on this slide. Information gathered from these outreach activities were considered in planning and setting the foundation for our public comment period, which began on June 27th and will end on August 13th. Today, we are holding a public hearing to collect official public comments. After the 48-day comment period closes, we will review all the comments received and we will issue a response to comment document. Documents related to this draft decision are available for your review at the Robert Louis Stevenson Library. You can also view them at the Department of Toxic Substances Control file room in Sacramento or Chatsworth. Please call for an appointment. The draft permit documents are also available for you to review online on the DTSC EnviroStor database at https://bit.ly/PRRS_ESTORLINK. I would like to remind you one last time that we are in the 48-day comment period. If you would like to make comment, please call, email, or mail your comment to Taylor Gross from the Department of Toxic Substances Control. His contact information is provided here. As a reminder, we will be taking public comments after the Q&A session. Please hold all comments for the official comment record until that time has been announced. We will now begin the question and answer portion of tonight's meeting. If you have a question about the presentation, please raise your virtual hand using the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen or type it into the Q&A. If you are participating on our Spanish line, please give us a few moments and our interpreter will call on you. We will do our best to respond to questions in the order we receive them. We will now begin by taking some of the questions entered into the Q&A during the presentation. So now is the time, if anybody out there has a question, please raise your hand or type them into the Q&A. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, written in our Q&A. I will go over and look to see if there's anyone with their hands raised. Okay, no questions. I would like to check with our interpreters to see if we have any questions from those participating in the Spanish line. Would you please let us know if there are any questions from those participating in Spanish, Mark or Leticia? Okay, I don't see any questions coming in. Okay, I'm going to go one more last time, just in case anybody wants to have a question, please raise your hand. If not, then we'll move over to begin the comment period. Okay, there isn't anybody with their hands raised or any questions in our Q&A box. So we will now begin the public comment session of the meeting. The format will be similar to the Q&A, and however, DTSC will provide written responses at a later date. All public comments will be responded to and included in the response to comments document, which will be uploaded to EnviroStor and sent to those providing their contact information. Again, if you would like a copy of this document sent to you, please send your contact information to me via email at teresa.hernandez@dtsc.ca.gov. That's teresa.hernandez@dtsc.ca.gov. And note if you would like to receive it by email or mail. I will now turn it over to the hearing officer, Ryan Batty, to open the public comment hearing. Ryan?
Thank you, Teresa. Good evening again. Again, my name's Ryan Betty, and I'm going to be the hearing officer for the hearing portion of today's meeting. The public hearing is the formal part of the meeting where comments are received for the record. If you make a comment during this portion of the meeting, DTSC will record the comment and we will provide a written response at a later date. Next slide, please. Actually, apologies. Can we go back one slide? Okay, so DTSC has made a tentative decision to grant the hazardous waste facility permit application for Pacific Resource Recovery Services. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to provide the public the opportunity to present oral or written comments on the department's decision. This public hearing is being held in accordance with the provisions of California Health and Safety Code, Section 25200, and California Code of Regulations, Title 22, Section 66271.11. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, once a final permit decision is made, an announcement of the decision is mailed to all the people on the facility mailing list. Everyone who commented during the public comment period and provided their contact information will receive a written response to their comments in a response to comments document. A copy of the response to comments document will also be placed in the administrative record for the final permit decision. DTSC's final permit decision can be appealed if there are comments on the decision or if there are any significant changes to the decision. Any person who filed comments on the draft decision or who participated in the public hearing can choose to appeal the final permit decision. The appeal must be filed with DTSC's Board of Environmental Safety within 30 days of the date of the final permit decision. Further details about the appeal process will be included in the notice of final permit decision. So I'm now opening the public hearing, and I will turn it back over to Teresa to help facilitate the process of entering comments into the record.
Okay, if you would like to verbalize your comment, please raise your virtual hand using the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen or type it into the Q&A. If you are participating on our Spanish line, please give us a few moments and our interpreter will call on you. Please speak loudly and clearly so that your comment can be recorded. Thank you. We will begin by taking some of the comments. I see one hand raised. We will go ahead and take that comment. Brisa Sotelo, if you can go ahead and state your comment.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brisa Sotelo, and I am a resident of Montebello. However, I go into Boyle Heights every single day, as that is where I grew up. My family is there, and my children go to school at Dolores Mission. I also sit on the Dolores Mission board. I sit as an executive board member of the LA Chamber of Commerce and executive board member of BizFed, another business association. And I am here to ask you to support a full permit. This company has been in our community for a very long time. I can remember back to when I was young. I won't tell you what year that was because I'll give it off. But I remember them providing paint back then for our families to remove graffiti. Since then, they have transitioned to PRR and now are continue to employ our community members, our churchgoers, our family, our students, our friends that have had great paying jobs in Boyle Heights that pay excellent job wages. But in addition to that, they give back to this community, whether it's at our schools, whether it's at our local parks. They go above and beyond. Most importantly, what I want to point out is that their environmental record is impeccable. You named it on your own presentation with the VSR number of 0. They have gone above and beyond to be environmentally friendly, to be environmentally safe. And I think that's what we all strive to do, right? We all are in this together. So I would ask that you approve their permit. And I'm happy to answer any questions about how they have been very, very supportive of our schools, our students, our parents that work there, and our family members. Thank you.
Thank you, Brisa Sotelo, for your comment. We will go now next to Jose Orozco Pelico. Go ahead and state your comment. You could unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jose Orozco Pelico. I am a resident of Bow Heights, really closely to the facility, and definitely want to submit my support for the facility and the owners and staff. They are a pillar in the community in many ways, just like how Brisa has mentioned. With employment of the local hire, given economic opportunity, but also in backing of various organizations in Bow Heights. So definitely want to just record my support for their full permit from the DTSC.
Thank you so much, Jose, for your comment as well. I just wanted to remind you both, if you could please forward your information so that we can respond to your comments in the response to comment document in the future. I would really appreciate that. Again, my email address is teresa.hernandez@dtsc.ca.gov. Thank you. I will now move it over. If there is anybody else that has any comments to make, please go ahead and raise your hands. And I will also check with the Spanish interpreters to see if they have any questions on in the Spanish line. Okay, there's no more comments in the Spanish line. And I don't see any comments in the Q&A or any more hands raised. Brian?
Yes, thanks, Teresa. Okay, so let the record show that no one else has asked to speak and that I am closing the public hearing for Pacific Resource Recovery Services. The time is 6:44 p.m. on Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. And Teresa, I'll hand it back to you.
This brings us to the end of the public comment session. As a reminder, the public comment period opened on June 27th, 2024, and will conclude on August 13th, 2024. Please submit all comments by August 13th, 2024. Written comments can be submitted to Taylor Gross via email or mail. Email at taylor.gross@dtsc.ca.gov. That's taylorgrose@dtsc.ca.gov, or by U.S. mail at Taylor Gross, Project Manager, 8800 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California, 95826. Thank you for your interest and for participating. We will take this information back, use it to inform our permit decision, and issue a response to comment document. We are grateful for the opportunity to connect with you and listen to you. Please be sure to provide your written comment by the end of the public comment period. Thank you all and have a good evening.